Welcome to the EnRich Your Soul Podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I personally have struggled with for many, many years. And it wasn't until recently, and I'll say probably the past few months, that I've dove in a little bit deeper into this topic. And I think it's something that we all have struggled with at some point, either deeply or on the surface level. And that is being unapologetically us, being the authentic version of us, just completely not caring what other people think and figuring out what makes us happy, figuring out what excites us, what we want to do with our lives, what brings us joy. Because I think so many times we over apologize for who we are, or we compromise who we are because we need to fit into this societal norm, or we need to follow blueprints that are told to us on social media on how to be successful or how to be us or how to do these different things that are part of our lives. And so I want to talk a little bit about how that is holding us back from success, and then things you can do to actually implement some mindful, intentional topics or tactics to move forward and being more unapologetically you. So why this holds us back is that, there are many cliche sayings like you're writing your own story. You can't live somebody else's story. You're not going to find joy in the successes that others find because they're finding their joy in their success. And if you continue to follow their path, their blueprint, word for word, item for item, line for line, you're going to find their version of success. You're going to find their finish line. You're not going to be focusing on the things that make you happy and bring you joy. So even if you did succeed, it's going to feel empty at some level. It's going to feel less than because you've not figured out your specific path. So there are different things that you can talk to yourself about, or ways that you can remind yourself on how to be more authentic, how to be more unapologetically you, and find that joy. Because think about it. If you went through the rest of your life doing and investing in and spending time in things that others find joy in or others deem valuable that you truly don't, but you feel like you have to fit some sort of a mold or a pattern or a belief or a lifestyle because that's going to bring you happiness. And I'm air quoting for those on video, you see it. For those on the podcast, you don't. That's not going to be what you need to do. That if you get to the end of your days and you think, wow, I really fulfilled somebody else's goals and I fulfilled somebody else's dreams and their definition of happiness, what is that going to say about you? How is that going to make you feel? There's no way you can feel fulfilled that way. So a couple of different things that you can think about as you're pursuing this definition, because I think too, between external pressure, social media, all these different elements, we've truly lost who we are. And so how do you find that? How do you rediscover that true you, that true version of you? So let's talk about a couple of the questions that I ask myself and I think are incredibly valuable. And number one is, if no one were watching, what would you truly want to do? If it weren't up to anybody else, what would you truly want in your life? What would you want to be doing? How would you want to be spending your time? What does your success look like? What does your happiness look like? Leave everybody else out of it. And I know that's hard because at some level, people influence us, whether that's family members, friends, colleagues, whatever that winds up being. Sorry, I got to adjust my microphone here. But understand that your definition of success, your true wants and needs and desires are yours. They're specifically fine-tuned to you. And I'm sure you're like me in the sense that there have been times that you're pursuing something, maybe you're going through it now, where you have this definition in your mind of success and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like it doesn't quite fit. And it's like that shirt or that outfit that you try on that looks really good, but it doesn't feel good on you. That's what that feels like. When you're putting somebody else's definition on you, that's what it feels like. It may look great, but it just doesn't feel like it fits. So what does that definition of happiness and success without anybody else's influence look like to you? Write it down. Write down the things you would want to do if nobody was looking. Write down the things you would want to succeed, how you want to be spending your time, what truly brings you joy. So that's exercise number one. Exercise number two, write down, when do I feel like the best or my most favorite version of myself? What am I doing? How kind of similar to the first one, but what are you doing in your life and how are you spending your time and what are you focusing on that makes you your favorite version of yourself? What does that look like? How does that feel? What is going on in your world? Because again, there are times where I could define that I had success with something, but it wasn't my favorite version of myself. I was compromising myself at some level. I was doing something that I didn't want to do. Yes, maybe the money was great or maybe the recognition was great, but it didn't feel like me. That's why I love what I'm doing now, because this is my favorite version of myself. It's a work in progress still. I'm still trying to unlearn some bad habits and unlearn some self-defeating thoughts and some imposter syndrome things. But I'm in a position now where I am truly my favorite version of myself, getting to help people, getting to talk with people, getting to be there to entertain and empower people. That is what I have been meant to do all my entire life. And no disrespect to any of my previous jobs or employers or colleagues, but you got a really good version of me, but did you get the best version of me? No, because that wasn't the thing that I was meant to do. So what brings you excitement? What are the things you want to wake up and do, even if it's hard? Like I always laugh when people say, well, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Absolutely false. I'm doing what I love more than anything I've ever done, but I have also never worked harder. But I enjoy the work. I enjoy the time that I put into it versus working at a job that you're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And it's not fulfilling. It's not exciting. It's not who you are, what your favorite version of yourself is. So adjust that. It's up to you to adjust that. And then finally, what has previously brought you joy throughout your life? And what are the patterns that you see within that? So I give a perfect example of like going back and looking at my life. What has been a consistent theme of joy for me? Music has always been a big part of me. Ever since I was 6 or 7 years old, I remember sitting in my room listening to Casey Kasem's Top 40 and having my cassette on play, record, pause. And yes, I understand that I just dated myself big time there, but that brought me joy. I used to sit in my room for hours listening to Casey Kasem and trying to tape Duran Duran or trying to tape Prince or trying to tape Michael Jackson on this cassette because it brought me joy. It made me so happy. Creativity. I grew up as an only child and I had to be creative. I had to come up with different things. I played in my room for hours and I had to create scenarios and be creative and come up with different ideas. And so now when I think about creative thought time, it brings me joy. Brainstorming brings me joy. I love it. Love it. It brings me such a passionate level of joy that I can't even begin to describe it. And finally, helping people. I've always been that person that people either come to because they know that I will care and listen and be empathetic, or I'm that person that, for better or for worse, it's always for better. Sometimes it's just, it gets to be a bit much, but I'm always that person that people come to, or that I can be sitting at an airport bar grabbing lunch or something like that as I'm flying around. And somebody will sit next to me. I had this happen in Dallas one time where I'm sitting at a restaurant bar in the airport waiting on my flight. And somebody came up, actually 2 people in 2 instances in that same trip, sat down next to me and then unloaded their life story to me. And I love that. I love that people feel naturally comfortable with me, even if it's complete strangers and even if it's for 1 hour of their day or their life, that they get to share something with somebody who truly gives a damn. Like that to me is always a blessing. So all of those things are consistent. So when I think now about what I'm doing in my life, it involves music. It involves brainstorming. It involves helping people and listening to people and serving people and empowering people. So those 3 consistencies in my life are evident more so than ever now. So what are those for you? What in your life has brought you joy? And it can be activities, it could be themes, it could be feelings, whatever it winds up being. Maybe you just always enjoy being near the water and you live in central Kansas where there is none. But maybe there was something that just brought you joy. What can you do to put into your life? And maybe it's not, you don't necessarily have to move to South Carolina or work in oceanography, but maybe inserting the joy of knowing that every trip that you plan is near water brings you happiness. And maybe that helps you move and motivates you to want to do more to achieve that. That's part of it. So what are you doing to insert that in your life? So if no one were watching, what would you truly want and do? What truly excites you? What makes you your favorite version of yourself? And then what patterns in your life have been there all along that you've just not paid attention to because you're too busy or you've got too much going on or you've suffocated the true version of yourself to fit into some sort of a mold? What are those things? Sit in some quiet time and think about these different questions. Think about the different things that can come about when thinking these through and being very dedicated in your thought. I promise you, if nothing else, you will crack the door open to happiness that maybe seemed shut before, because you're spending intentional time in discovering what is happy for you, what is joyful for you. Spend that time. It's worth it. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to once again, like diving into what excites me. I'm excited to be, relaunching the podcast. I'm excited to be consistent with it. I know that I've talked about being consistent, and I've let things get in my way. So that stops today. So I'm going to be more consistent with the podcast. So please subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast with as many people as you possibly know, because you never know who's going to need a little bit of enrichment and a lot of self-discovery. Have a wonderful day. Find what excites you, what lights you up.